Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 521. On this episode, I am joined by Joan M. White, a Shelburne, Vermont poet with a longtime Zen practitioner, to talk about her debut collection, A Commoner's Prayer, Poems, released April 1st, 2026. Rootstock describes her book as an exploration of the seasons, not only spring, summer, fall, and winter, but the human seasons too. Grief, love, resilience, and the ways a life changes shape over time. Joan's poems draw on plant knowledge, wandering in woods and wetlands, and a deep attention to daily experience, where wonder and hard truths can sit right next to each other. We talk about how Zen practice informs her craft, what haiku and Haibun teach a writer about precision, and how to write poems that feel intimate without being sentimental. We will also talk about what it means to stay observant in a loud world and how a poem can be a form of steadying. If you like poetry that's clear-eyed, tender, and quietly brave, this conversation is for you. Joan, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So for listeners meeting you for the first time, what is the one-sentence pitch for A Commoner's Prayer?
Wow, that's quite a question, Barney. There are, some very short common prayers in here, but I was looking for a title for this book that spoke to what we call in Zen the ordinary mind. Just the ordinary mind, the everyday ordinary mind. And so I think that sort of wraps up this collection,
Well, so Rootstock frames it as a seasons of life. So what season were you writing from when these poems kind of like came together for you then?
So, well, I don't think that I was writing to the seasons. I think that when I went to put a collection of poetry together, I had all kinds of poems, and you're trying to organize them in some fashion, and they just very nicely fell into seasonal categories to begin with. So I did put the collection together with spring, summer, fall, winter, and mud season. And that's how I began to sort of organize the book. And then there were poems, of course, that were not nature poems, but they were, poems about, living people or things apart from nature. And they fell nicely into those categories as well. So I slipped them into the categories of spring, summer, fall, winter, mud season.
So how did you know you had this collection, that it actually could become a collection of poems and not just individual pieces?
I went through a lot of years of poetry that I had. I didn't go too far back, but I went, I wanted to see if there was, some sort of collection. And so I gathered the poems mostly that I like, and I kind of graded them. I gave them a check plus, a check minus, and then I went to see, well, do I have enough check plus poems that would really make a collection? And if I didn't, then I slipped some of the checks in there, but I didn't take any of the check. I didn't have, I never had to go that way. So that's sort of how I went about it. Mm-hmm. And then, you have to ask yourself, publishers want to see more than I think most publishers want to see more than 48 poems. So, and I had plenty, so I went ahead with it. Yeah.
Was it nostalgic to kind of go back through your poems and did you have recollection of where you were at that point in your life when you wrote these poems?
Oh
How
yeah, yeah,
therapeutic
definitely.
how
Yeah,
therapeutic was it for you to do that?
yeah, it was. I mean, I would remember even things like where I was sitting, or where I was driving when I wrote that poem, or um, one poem, that is in the collection. Actually, one of my favorite poems, nostalgically, is one of my favorites. Um, is a poem that I wrote because somebody called me in the middle of the night, actually the wee hours of the morning. A friend called me and said, "You have to get out of bed right now and walk outside." And the northern lights were happening, and it was about, I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And so those kind of memories, certainly pop up when you start looking back, yeah, and sifting through.
Did I read this right that you've been a Zen practitioner for more than 30 years?
I have, yeah.
So, is that being a Zen practitioner make you a better poet, or being a poet make you a better Zen practitioner?
Well, that's a great question, and so I need to quote somebody about that because um, Jane Hirschfield again nails it. She says that poetry and Zen practice are both a way of looking at the world with your eyes wide open. So that I see them as equal. I don't see one feeding the other. They are both practices, and they are both equally powerful, I think. And sometimes when I hear somebody a poet talking about or reading a poem or talking about a poem, I think to myself that that person is a meditator. That person is looking at the world with their eyes wide open. Yeah.
So, how do you know when a poem is finished?
Oh, I don't think they're ever finished. They're, who says that? Somebody says they're abandoned. I can't remember who that is, but some famous poet says they're abandoned. No, no. In fact, that I would say that was one of the most difficult things about putting a collection together, is not to get into rewriting every one of them again. Like picking at, well, I call it picking at them. Oh, was that really the right word? I mean, you just can go on and on and on. Yeah. Language is amazing that way. It's just, it's always, there's always another subtlety to be explored, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, how did you work with your poems? You How did you separate to make sure like you're using metaphors in a way that was personal and unique to you and your voice, and not necessarily become like genre specific to nature?
Oh boy, I don't think that I don't know that I work that way. Genre specific. I don't think that way. I think it depends on, where do you spend your time.
Mm.
So I spend a lot of time outdoors. I'm an avid gardener. I garden a lot, and I do a lot of walking in the woods. And so um but I don't ever think, well, I'm going to write a poem about this.
Mm.
I don't. What usually happens well, I mean, it's probably better that I just kind of talk about my practice of poetry writing. So I get up about 4:30 in the morning, and I fix myself a cup of coffee, and I sit in a chair with my coffee, and I free write. I have journals that I free write in. Here's the journal, and I put stickers all over them. So here's my journal right now. I always use the same kind. It's always this big black with, and it has to have line pages because I can't face a blank page, and I can't write on a computer. So they call that period of time in the morning has a name. It's called hypnopompic. It's before your listing duty filled, left brain. I have to do this, that, and the other thing today. Mind kicks in, so I try to take advantage of that. And I write for about an hour, and then I go over to the Zen Center and I sit for an hour, and that's about it, for the day. And then the stuff that I write in the morning, I think I don't want to call it crap or garbage, but it's not. It's just I think it's muscle building. I think of it as just keeping that muscle in tune, that kind of thing. And then mostly I go back and I look at pages, I flip through and I see if there's anything there. There might be a sentence there or something. And if something clicks, I keep it in my mind. And I think I write a lot of poetry in my mind. So I just ruminate. I ruminate a lot, and I ruminate while I'm driving. I ruminate while I'm grocery shopping. When I get into bed at night, I have that phrase in my mind, and now maybe it's turning into something else, and it's getting a little bigger, and then at some point I say, this thing is ready to go down on the page, and so then I write it down on the page and by hand. I don't write it on the computer. And then I write it, I fool around with it a lot. And then at some point, I gather the courage to put it on the computer. It takes me, it takes quite a bit of courage for me to put it on that white blank thing in front of me, but I do it. And then I print it and I put it beside where I sit in the morning. And then in addition to my morning writing, if there's something sitting there, I'll look at it again, and then I'll start to fool around with it on that white page. So I have something here. So here's something, and I scratch at it, and I make notes, and I cross things out, and put other ideas in, and that sort of works towards you know final product. But I would say that I am not a prolific writer. It takes me quite a while to get something to a point where I could share it. It probably takes me about a month. So, and I have a deadline because I meet with a poetry group once a month. And so I need to bring something. So that's sort of what I'm working towards. I'm working towards having something to bring to share, and then we critique each other's work. And that's very helpful. So we all benefit from that. We've been meeting for about 25 years. There's three of us. There was four of us, but one person passed.
Mm.
Allison Prine and Sue Burton are in that group,
Okay.
and myself. You might know them.
So, how did you separate these out into let people know too is that for the book A Commoner's Prayer, uh, is this something where you have to read it from front to back, or can people open up any part of
Yeah,
the
you
book?
can open it up anywhere. Yeah, absolutely. Most people do.
Mm.
So, I mean, one of the things I did think about was, well, what if somebody opens this book in the middle? What if somebody opens it up square in the middle? And I put my favorite poem there. So I did think about things like that. I put, um, I think I worked mostly at favorites of my own. I don't think that I worked mostly at, well, what's my best and putting that up front. So I put my absolute favorite as the first poem. And then this one that I was talking about earlier that, comes from my friend calling me in the middle of the night. I put it square in the middle.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. Thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So, did you want to share one of your poems with us?
Oh, sure. Yeah, maybe I'll just read this one to you. So this one is called Northern Lights. I step out the door into the night, into a world I no longer know, or one stripped of the mind's veil. A colossal snake, green, iridescent, its single eye a street lamp, one muscled being moving in wave-like contractions as it swallows the heavens. Why are we so frightened of our own beauty? Chameleons, ads in magazines, on billboards, eat us alive, spit a myth of mediocrity at us. But I'm walking toward and into the serpent all at once, my shadow hiding behind me. If there is a God, please let just one man or woman wake at this reptilian hour to witness a lone woman standing in the road, the sky trembling before her.
Now, is there a poem in there that didn't make the cut that you kind of wish that you put in the book?
No, I don't have one that I wish that I put in there. No,
Really?
no, no, I'm happy with it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I am.
And so, how does one edit a book of poetry? So, at what point doesn't say like an editor like Rootstock Publishing, do they more focus on arrangement of which poems go where, or do they focus also on, because a lot of the pieces of poetry are like the stanzas and the rhythms, and it's really hard to cut and edit some of that stuff, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't feel, I mean, for me, I'm trying to remember and it was Samantha, um, that she came back and, um, I mean, she does what should be done, professionally, told me first what she liked about everything, what she liked about it. And, she made a few, she didn't make a lot of, um, she didn't ask me to change things. She made some suggestions, just really very few suggestions. Um, and that was it. And I don't remember what they were. So, um, I remember being a little surprised that,
Mm.
um, but I think from talking to other poets that I know that have published, that they have never spoken of a lot of editing going on. I think it's really hard to dive into somebody else's poem
Right.
and tell them how to change it, you know. Um, I don't know why that's different, you know. I think it's different than prose that way, maybe.
Right.
You know, I mean, you could, you know, you can go into prose and say, I don't know. I think you can, you know, you can ask people to flesh things out in prose and cut and, you know, do you really need this? And I mean, I don't know if you know Robert Caro and the man who has written the Lyndon Johnson biography. He's working on it's a tome, you know. I mean, it's just amazing. Have you ever seen that? There's a documentary called I think it's called Turning the Page, and it's about him and his editor. And it's fascinating. You know, these two guys have been working together for decades, you know. Caro's like in his 90s now, and people who have read the first three or two, I haven't read them, Johnson, you know, biographies are like frantic that he's going to die before he finishes this one, you know. And he's taking his time and, you know, no hurry. And, but when he first went to, and I don't remember the man's name, his name is also Robert. I can't remember his last name. When he first went to him, he brought him like, you know, this stack of pages, and he said to Caro, "We need to cut 30,000 words from this. Nobody's going to read this." So you know, I mean that's just so different than somebody bringing you a, you know, like this little poem, right? I mean, it's apples and oranges, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. So I don't know because I can't, you know, I don't write prose. I don't have any idea what that, but I think, yeah, it's a lot different. So I don't think I expected a lot of editing, and I didn't receive a lot of, you know, oh, you need to change this word or
Right.
that kind of thing. I think there's a kind of, maybe there's a kind of respect involved. I don't know.
Right. So most of these are like, is it because you mentioned a lot of like nature and seasons and outdoors? Is it mostly focused on what northern New Englanders would expect, or is this more of a universal outdoors theme to it?
Well, I think that, you know, it certainly, you know, is New England, you know, because that's my experience. But I feel that you know, I try to bring in, you know, it's sort of like a window. Okay. So, you know, if the window is closed, I would say when you're, you know, talking about, you know, walking down that path, you're describing that. And then you open it to a more universal idea. You know, it's called it's a leap. It's a volta, they call it,
Mm.
you know, and it's a leap. You know, you open it up to the universe, or maybe you start you know, a universal idea and then you shut the window, you know, you you, you bring people, you know, the reader to um, a, an experiential thing about that universal idea.
Mm.
Maybe that, I think that's the best way to describe it.
Right. Now, how many, so as it takes place here, you know, in northern New England, how many
Hmm.
poems have you written that are about ticks?
None. No, I haven't. And I have a terrible fear of ticks. I had Lyme disease. So I had Lyme disease for about a year back when nobody knew what to do
What it
about it.
was? Yeah.
And doctors didn't really want to believe you, you know. I mean, they were like, "No, you don't have that." I'm like, "Oh, yes, I do." Anyway,
I know
no, I don't.
growing up, yeah, growing up here, no, I would spend hours My mother
Yeah,
would kick us out of the
yeah,
house at 7 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't let us back in until like 6 o'clock at night. And we would
yeah.
play all day in the woods. Never had to worry about a tick. And now it's just they're just part here in northern New England. They're just here. They're all just here now.
Well, they're everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I was at the Zen Center the other day working in the gardens there, and this guy had gone down. I call it the back 40. There's all this open land back there that the land trust owns now. And he came back and he said, "I picked up 4 ticks." I said, just walking out down to the river. I mean, incredible. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sad. Yeah.
N- So now if so Joan, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where is the best place they could go to?
Well, I have a website. It's joanmwhite.com, and they can go there. And the book is sort of at the forefront there, right now. And there are a few poems there, an events calendar, so they can see where I'm reading. I think my next reading, and when the haiku workshops are. I'm reading in my hometown next in August.
Okay. Whitman,
Yeah,
Mass, huh? Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
at the town park. That's going to be
Okay.
fun. Yeah, so there's that. And I haven't been paying much attention to it, to be honest. I'm not very good about this stuff, but I should get better.
And they can see some of your poems are in here as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of poems here. I do write, I think there's 2 haibuns. I do write quite a few. I do write a lot of haibuns. I'm a big fan of that form. I like that form a lot. Yeah.
Remind our listeners and viewers the difference between a haiku and a haibun.
So a haibun is a prose poem followed by a haiku. Yeah, and they come from Basho, who gave us haiku. He did a lot of traveling in the 1600s on foot, and he put together these travelogues, and that's how he wrote his travelogues. He would, write some prose, and then he would write a haiku that reflected something about the prose, and that's where the haibun came from.
So fascinating. So Joan, people can go to joanmwhite.com
Yeah.
and learn more about you, where you're at, where they can purchase the books. And also too, interested in this book, also go to your local library and ask your local library to purchase a copy of the book so it can be
Oh,
available
that's a good
in your local
idea.
library
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Or I could donate one to the library.
Right. Yeah.
I
Uh,
should do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when's your next book of poetry coming out, Joan?
Oh. No, 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 no. I'm not working on. I'm not working on that. I am embarking on a smaller thing, but actually, I'm writing a lot of sonnets, and I want to write a crown of sonnets.
Ooh,
So a crown is 15 sonnets that are connected in a particular way. And that's what I'm working on. What I would like to. I'm working towards. Let's put it that way.
okay.
So I'm writing sonnets because, and I'm having a lot of fun with them. So, um, you know, doing all kinds of things to them and with them. So, yeah, that's what
Wow.
I'm focused on right now.
Wow. So when you publish your book of sonnets, you'll have to come back on then. We'll talk
I
about it.
don't know. I don't know about a book of sonnets, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. But thank you.
Yeah. Well,
It's
thank you so
lovely
much,
talking.
Joan. This was a great conversation. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. It was fun. Yeah.